Hey, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. We're doing a live stream today. Somewhat of a spontaneous one, but hopefully I gave at least a few hours of notice for anyone who wanted to actually catch it live so they could actually get on it. In terms of activities, just so folks are aware, I guess my phone's letting me know that it's time to start. Um, so I have at least one more live stream planned next week, the 27th. That will be Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do a this or that, a tot. So given the holidays, it's been, I have had some people requesting if I would please do another this or that. I had hoped to in early December, and I just didn't get around to getting it planned because I have to work those up. I actually don't have this one fully planned out yet in terms of content. However, I have started that today in terms of building out those comparisons. So I just checked with a couple of people about seeing if we could all agree upon a particular time that we would be able to do it next week. It's already available if you want to set a notification. I already have it scheduled because there was a time where Tony from Eclectic Gamers, he's done all the other tots, and David Dennis, who was on the first two that I did, they're both available. So it'll be small, at least that's currently planned, and we're going to do that next week. So we'll also do another game. People are like saying they want pinball games converted into watch games. So another pinball game people know from a podcast is called Game You Like, Game You Hate. So we'll do Watch You Like, Watch You Hate, kind of to lead that off. And then we'll actually just do some this or that, some comparisons. And hopefully it'll just be fun for folks. Yes, good evening, Kevin, or evening your time. It's actually 4 p.m. here. So just a tad before evening for me. But I figured this was a good opportunity. I'm still technically working from home, but I've closed the emails out. I'll just recheck them here before I end for the day because I'm actually taking the rest of the year off. So I need to burn some vacation time. So one of the topics that I thought would be good to do is sort of like favorite watches of 2022. And of course, as people come along and chat and want to throw out things, I can always pull up some. I have 11. I have 11 that I went through this morning that I've been thinking about, and I've loaded them all up on pages. We'll kind of go in, at least if I've organized it properly, in ascending order of retail price. So we'll start with the cheapest watches that I've grabbed, and we'll go all the way up to the ridiculously priced watches. And so I've seen a few other videos either do like their best of 2022 or the ones these are not watches I have handled. I have not. Some of these I've looked at in person, but none of these are watches that I've owned. I don't really borrow watches, but none I've had any extensive time with is sort of the way I would describe it. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the content so that I can go eat pizza after I'm done. Sorry for the hoodie look. It is really, really cold and I didn't want to turn the heat up. So I'm wearing my Syracuse hoodie today so that I don't freeze to death. So, all right, let me minimize me. This is the first one I want to start with. This is the least expensive one on the list at just under $900. This is the Khaki Field Titanium. It's an automatic watch, 38 millimeter. Obviously, it goes with that very familiar field watch aesthetic that Hamilton is known for. This, when they revealed these in 2022, they actually revealed, I think there are at least 4 dial variants on this. And actually, they might not just be dial variants. I think there's also PVD coding. But anyway, the case is titanium. I like this, and hopefully I've zoomed in enough for you. There's some texturing in the hour ring, which I really like. And then, of course, something Hamilton's very fond of. And I really, as field watches go, this is my favorite aesthetic, where they have the 24 hours, so 13 on through 24, as the interior markings of the bezel. So you have the full 24 hours marked, but it's not like all around the bezel or something. They actually use it via the dial, which I think is really attractive. I've been a big fan of the Hamilton one for a while. I have a Marathon that follows that look, and I actually went with the Marathon simply because it seems like everyone gets the Hamilton, and I didn't want to be quite so samey. But I'm not quite sure if it's like a suede strap or what. Obviously, you could change the straps out. I've never owned a titanium watch, period. These Hamilton ones are reasonably priced. Citizen also has quite a few, I believe, titanium watches. I think they have quite a few. I know they have some that I think are within reason. But it's got all the key parts about the dial that I would like, unlike a more traditional military style that you would often associate with a field watch, you do have these nice little orange accents as well for the seconds markings on the chapter ring. So that's why I picked this black version. They have a green. I think the green, it's a little, I think they went with pistachio, but they don't pull it off quite as well, in my opinion, as Breitling did. They have a concrete looking one, which I don't like. The color's okay, but the kind of random jazz-esque feel of the concrete patterning I think is just a little too weird. So anyway, so this one is the inexpensive one on my list. Obviously, it's not cheap. This is a watch that is almost $1,000, and if you were willing to give up the titanium aspect of this Hamilton field watch, you could find a lot of other Hamiltons with basically the same dial aesthetic for under 500 on sale, at least, and going used, obviously, even further. Of course, Hamilton's not a watch I recommend you explore retail. They're shop worn versions, Joma Shop, gray market, used, all of those. They make a lot. So if you ever want to get into a Hamilton, I would suggest, as I would with pretty much any watch, but I would really suggest looking at something outside of the retail experience, because they're not really luxury watches, and so it's not like you're going to be treated special getting a retail experience. So you might as well save some money, and they tend to be fairly robust options. I personally have only ever owned one Hamilton watch. I did not like it. I liked the dial aesthetic. I didn't like the movement. It used a Valjoux movement as a base, though. This would not suffer from that problem. This is an automatic watch, but it's not going to be that weird unidirectional, really noticeable. I didn't know anything at the time about movements and Valjoux movements and how they spin with the rotor and stuff. So it was kind of like, it was an ignorance thing that put me in the position I was. And so that watch has moved along to someone else who can better appreciate it. So moving up the price point, let's talk about Zen. Now, this is the one watch or set of watches, because there are four, that I do not have. I'm linking to Hodinkee here in my URLs rather than Zen's watch site itself. And the reason is these are all sold out. Zen doesn't have, at least I couldn't find it on their website anymore. I remember pulling them up there back when they were revealed, and I think the yellow ones were still around at that time, but now they've apparently sold them all off. Now, Zen is an interesting company because I know a lot of people, or what do we call them? Are there like the Panerai people, right? They call themselves Pananistas or something, right? Like, is there a Zen version? Like, is there like the Zen Club or something? I don't know. I'm rambling. So anyway, the Model 556 is not a special model. You can get Zen 556s. They're very staid though, and like black dials and stuff. And while I like black dials, most of the Zens I've ever looked at, I think there's something about them. They look, maybe they're a little too function over form, which is weird for me, because I don't think of myself as someone who wants watches that are overly kind of frilly. But Zen watches, there's something about the aesthetic normally that bugs me. I'd have to look at them and really think about why I don't like them. But these are just playful enough, and the way that the hands look and I like the texturing on these dials. I thought when these were revealed around Watches and Wonders, these watches looked really good, and I liked all of the colors actually. And so you can see they came in a variety. I'd say the blue one's probably my least favorite. I'm not normally a pretty big fan of baby blue or sky blue. We're going to have one more later on, I'll spoiler, a Grand Seiko, that I do think pulls it off. But of course, Grand Seiko is kind of like a step above on all their dials. But again, these are all basically the same thing except a different color. So, you've got this forest green. Again, you've got this like pebble, almost bead blasted style look where the beads are on the dial. This mustard yellow, which I think actually looks pretty good. The red, and then my least favorite, the blue. But at 400, there were 400 pieces per color, and that's why they're all sold out. So unfortunate. I really think Zen would have been better served not doing these limited, or at least having one of the colors not be limited, so that they could still turn these out. But again, it was fairly impressive. I mean, price-wise, these weren't too bad, even given they were limited. Yeah, here we go, $1,460. So you see why I have them just above the khaki field titaniums. These are about $500 more than those were. You have a basic Sellita movement powers these, but they do have 200 meters of water resistance. They do have loom. They're what 13. I was going to say they're just under 39 millimeters. They're 38.5 millimeters and only 11 millimeters thick. So they're relatively thin. So for automatic movement watch, all of that. So again, kind of like that, what you would sort of expect out of Zen, but I think they look better than how I feel most Zen watches look. Again, Zen actually has a pretty big catalog, so I should say they look better than the 556s normally look. And there's some pretty big 556 fans. I had a couple of people who watch or have watched some of my videos on the channel who have mentioned that they were able to get this watch, and it sounded like they were all pleased with it. But we're talking like less than 6 people that I'm aware of told me that they had this. I think there were a few others that said they liked it, but of course, again, I think I was out of town when this was announced. I probably wouldn't have bought it anyway. Let's be honest. But when I went to look to see if I could buy them, I believe the yellow was all that was left, and I don't think it was left for another 2 weeks. So anyway, it was one of my favorite watch reveals though of the year. I don't normally I hear Zen and I'm just going to blow it off. It's going to be like some super robust fancy case and I'm not going to like how the dial looks. But in this case, I actually thought they made it fun, but still pretty functional. So anyway, so that's Zen. So let's go to my third favorite watch that was revealed in 2022. And that is actually a Longines. This is another brand I have never owned. So far, we've done one brand, Hamilton, that I've owned. I've never owned a Zen. I've never owned Longines. And I've looked at Longines a few times. Here's the problem with Longines for me. And this is a Dennis problem. So in my head canon, I put Longines and Tissot on the same plane, but Longines actually sell for a lot more money than Tissot seem to. So then I look at the price and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I don't want to do that. I mean, and it gets to be interesting because again, this watch set a price point where you're getting into Tudors. Like you can get 1926 Tudors for under $2,000 retail. So this watch comes in at $2,400. This is the Longines Master Collection 190th anniversary. But I wanted to show it off because when I saw it, there's just, again, as a dress watch, I really like this aesthetic. So again, you see kind of that beaded look that just like with the Zens, you see, I have a type. I have several types, but that is one of my types when it comes to watches. The thing, of course, that I think jumps out to anyone who looks at this sort of silver colored dial. Silver colored dials are one of my favorites, but it's these numerals. So these are clearly Breguet style numerals, right? So you've got the Breguet look from the old pocket watch era, and they look deep carved into the dial, almost like it's a sandwich dial. But I don't believe there's any, looking here, I don't think there's any backing to it. I don't think there's a separate plate. I think this is just carved in, and you just see these really deep engravings to get those Breguet numbers out there. And I think it looks great. I like the simple dots to function as your chapter ring with your seconds marking with a bigger dot every 5 seconds. I think that looks good. Of course, the blued hands look great. It's a simple time-only watch, minimal text, Longines, automatic, blah, and then of course Swiss made at the bottom. That's it. And otherwise, the numerals and that silver dial do all of the talking, which I think looks really good. I don't really care what it looks like in the box. But here you go. Here's a nice side shot. So you can get another example like at the 10 and the 11 of the depth of this carving in of those Breguet numerals. And the price point, this is steel. This is unlimited. They did limited runs in gold, but the steel version is not limited. Obviously, we've moved up about another $1,000 now so we're getting pricey. We're in luxury watch pricing at this point, at least how I define it. But $2,400 for a dress watch of this style, I think, is a pretty reasonable deal. And remember we talked about that Zen and about how it was like 11 millimeters thick. See, this is like Tudor 1926 thin, like 9.35 millimeters. I think my 1926 was like 9.3 something millimeters. It's probably the same. So again, this is a really thin watch, very functional as a dress watch would go. I really liked it a lot, and I was surprised for once, rather than Longines making me feel like it was too much. I looked at this and I thought, oh, okay, this is really reasonable, especially if you've been looking at Breguet. Now, we're talking very different pricing tiers, right? So Swatch Group, when we do Longines, it's not the bottom of their pyramid, but it's towards the bottom of the pyramid, and Breguet is their crown jewel. I think would be how they would rank them. At least they used to be not Omega, excuse me. Omega is in the Swatch Group, but the Swatch Group used to be pretty public about how they rank their brands. I think if you still go to the watch brands on the website, look at them. They're not in alphabetical order. I believe they're in an order of prestige, and it starts with Breguet. But Breguet watch, now Breguet, incidentally, that is a watch you buy used. Do not buy Breguet new. But you can't get a Breguet used, even though they're undervalued, arguably. You can't get one remotely near this price. It's hard to find Breguets under $10,000. So this, I think, would be a very approachable option for a lot of people that like that look and don't need it to say Breguet on the dial. So I was really, I almost actually had forgotten about that watch, this Longines, until I did my review today to go back and pick my favorites of what came out this year. I've forgotten about it. Again, part of the thing is I wouldn't be in the market for it because I already own so many. Like I have 5 dress watches already. So it's kind of like, well, I do like wear suits and stuff during the legislative session and such. That's only part of my time and part of the year. And most of the time I'm not necessarily this slummy, but I have more dress watches than proportionally makes sense for someone like me. But part of the fun is collecting watches. So see, D. Underhay has joined us live. Hey, D, thanks for stopping by to the live stream. He says, hello, I love that Longines. Looks fantastic in our local store with that engraved silver dial. See, I have not looked at this one in store. I'm trying to think when I went to the Omega boutique it wasn't boutique. When I went to the Omega AD, I don't remember if they had Longines. If they did, they didn't show them to me. But okay, great. I mean, I think it looks good in these renders, so I was hoping that it would hold up in the metal. Usually, if anything, you worry that the pictures look worse than in reality. That'd be an interesting thing. If anyone, feel free if you're watching or watching on record in the comment section, if you can name a watch that looks better in the photos make it look good, but in person it actually looks like crap. I'd like to know, like, if one is just like super photogenic, but in reality it's really an ugly watch. Because you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if there is one out there. So that was my third watch of my 11 favorites. Moving up the price bracket yet again, let's do another brand I have never owned. And much like Zen, this has been a brand that I've had a lot of difficulty getting into, and that is Nomos Glashütte. So Nomos is one of those brands that by and large has a lot of watches that sort of have embraced the Bauhaus aesthetic, which I don't really feel very strongly towards Bauhaus when it comes to wristwatches. Young House, I think, in fact, I think Young House does Bauhaus better and it does it cheaper. So if I were to want a Bauhaus watch, I would probably turn to Young House, I think is the name of the brand. Now I'm getting all the words mixed up. But that's not one of my favorites. Now, the thing I think, though, when I look, and it kind of reminds, and again, why I did my comparison to Zen is there's always been something about the dials. It's like, the Nomos dials are a little too playful, kind of like they go with an almost sport aesthetic, but then they just throw on weird splashes of color and it's almost toy-like. And it just doesn't click for me personally. This, though, does. So this is the Club Sport Neomatic Polar, $3,530. So now we've jumped up another $1,000 from where we were with the Longines. And personally, I full disclosure, I like the Longines more. But there's a lot here that I like. I like the numerals. Some of the watches that Nomos does are California dials. I don't like California dials. I never understood them. California dials, for those that aren't familiar, are where you'll split the dial and half of it will be in Arabic and half of it will be in Roman. And usually it's the top half that's Arabic and the bottom half that's Roman. At least I think that's how Nomos always does it. And all the versions I remember in the past, like modified Rolexes, I think that was the style they did. This doesn't do that, though. Nice, concentric circles, small second hand, looks really nice. Sunburst. I was talking earlier about how I have a certain look that I like that sort of bead blasted dial look. I like sunburst style dials too. I like fume dials. I like things that play with the light. So sunburst style, really appealing. I like this shade of blue and how it transitions with the light. I'm not actually a big blue dial watch guy, but this one works a lot for me. I like the case look overall, like how they've done the chapter ring area with the second markings. I think it's really well balanced. Probably my least favorite thing is how they've got the Neomatic labeled here in gold rather than like everything else. I just think it's a little weird. But overall, I thought this was a really nice look and actually for once got me to dig a little bit deeper into Nomos. I've actually gone to their site a couple of times to kind of window shop through their inventory, and it just never works for me. There's always something that makes me go, I don't like that watch, especially at the price points. And they've really gone deep into doing in-house movements, so the prices have gone up accordingly since they started doing that. But $3,530 probably wouldn't be my first pick. But if I was looking to get into something German, that would be an area I would definitely look at. I know a lot of people highly recommend that if you're wanting luxury German watches, Nomos is a great brand to start with. They offer quite a bit. A lot of their dials kind of look sort of samey. And this isn't all that different. So I don't want to over exaggerate. Like, this is dramatically different than the rest of their club lineup in particular. But if you like that basic shape, design, and layout of the dial, the Sport Neomatic, I think, is the best execution of it so far. And so again, it was just a highlight for me in 2022. So I've named a few that I like in regards, but not things that I would actually buy. Let's actually go into one that I've been, pretty interested in actually thinking about trying to get. I have to say thinking about because I can't try and get it. Dehydrating myself. So let's go to Omega. All right. This one I really got excited about when they announced it back, I believe, before Watches and Wonders. This was there. I've whined about this before, but I'm going to whine about it again because it's my show, so I get to do what I want. So this is the Aquaterra 150 meter watch. These are the 38 millimeters. They have several colors. They're all really striking. Sunburst style. This is my favorite. This is the saffron dial, but they've got a red one. They've got, I think they've got 3 others in the 38 millimeter, and then they have some 34 millimeters. I think some of them are the same colors and some of them are a different color. Overall, really the only thing I didn't like about this watch is I didn't like the non-color match date window. It's not bad. I mean, the white date window is okay. I'm assuming maybe because they're sunbursting, they didn't want to, they weren't going to sunburst the date window. So it's like, do you make it yellow or what do you do? So this might have been the right answer. Except it's not. The right answer would be to not put the date on this at all. These watches, I feel, are very, very clearly designed to compete with the Stella dial designs of the Oyster Perpetuals that Rolex does. Rolex's Oyster Perpetuals do not have dates. They are time-only watches. And, Omega seems to have a thing about not doing a lot of no-date watches. In fact, if you roll out the Speedmasters, I can't think of very many no-date watches. Like their Seamaster line, their DeVille line, their what's the other one? The Constellation line. Like they all have dates. It's like I do know that dates sell better than no dates, but it would be nice to see a bigger selection of no-date watches from them. I don't think they're chronos. That's why I put the Speedmasters aside. I don't think those all have dates. But again, you're stuck with another complication instead. So, and I'm saying sometimes I want something simple. Anyway, so enough of that. Again, we've moved up quite a bit now. I've almost doubled my price from the Club Sport from Nomos. We're at 6,000 retail at this point. But this watch is not available yet. None of these are. And again, they revealed these like in February or March of 2022. They're still contact a boutique about this piece. Or if you look on the screen before that, in the list of like all the Aquaterras, because there are plenty of Aquaterras that are out there, but of these new ones, these Stella wannabe ones, it's all add to wish list. That's what the buttons say. So it's really frustrating. I wanted to look at these when I went to the Omega dealer that we have in the area in Kansas City. And they said, nope, we don't have them yet. And they were hoping to get them in November, but it sounds like that didn't end up happening. So, it's like, it's unfortunate. I already have an Omega, so I don't know if I would get 2 Omegas at this point. But if I was to get a second Omega, it would probably be this. But I can't, at least not right now. So, I think it'll still do well for them when they can finally push them out. I just think it's really unfortunate that they revealed in 2022 when the watches cannot be purchased and owned in 2022. But my whining aside, it was a 2022 reveal. I still really like a lot about this watch. 150 meters water resistance. You can play with it, play in the water with it. You're not going to feel bad. You're not going to worry about it. I think it looks really, really keen, even with the date window. I think it's an excellent competitive offering versus Oyster Perpetuals, which retail for more money than this and have been selling secondhand for significantly more than retail. And you can't get those very easily retail, though. That's getting easier. So anyway, so the Aquaterra, is this version of the Aquaterra. There are other Aquaterras that look, actually, I like a lot about the Aquaterras. I'd say some people are put off by that broad arrow minute hand, but it's kind of like the helium escape valve wart on the 300Ms from Omega. It's just sort of part of their design at this point, or snowflake hands with the tutor. You either can accept it, you either like it, can accept it, or it just rules it out for you. And for me, it's like, it doesn't bug me enough. I've seen far worse executed broad arrows. We're going to actually cover one that's still one of my favorites of 2022 here in a little bit, but we're basically halfway through at this point. So I'm going to move to my six watches. And again, I'm doing 11 that I've picked as my favorites. So here we go. Grand Seiko. I mentioned earlier, I'm going to give you guys another baby blue looking watch. Not normally a color scheme I like. I could have done this one before the Aquaterra. They're both retailed at $6,000 US. This one was real early in 2022. I believe the article that I saw this first at was a Hodinkee piece January 6th. So this barely makes my cutoff, but barely counts because we're doing 2022. So this is the SBGA 471. Of all the Grand Seiko watches, generally speaking, their heritage collection, of which this is one, are my favorite. And in my opinion, if you're going Grand Seiko, it makes the most sense to go spring drive, though they do have a version that's, I think, similar to this in high beat if you're more into the true mechanical movement. I do have a Grand Seiko. I do have a spring drive. I do have a heritage. In fact, it might use the same spring drive as this. This is a 40 millimeter watch, though. Mine's a little bit smaller. It's a 39. These are fairly thick. They're 12 and a half. That's something having to do with the spring drive movement, I believe. Bracelet definitely is nothing to write home about because I'm sure this uses the same bracelet as my heritage does. Some people are bothered. Again, one of those design language things. A Grand Seiko on their more modern thing. Well, again, this is relatively modern, but of their more modern designs are often putting the power reserve indicator on the spring drives on the back of the watch in the display case back. Here, clearly they didn't do it. I like it on the front. I'm not the biggest fan of the cutout look, but I don't find it offensive. It's grown on me as I've seen it on more and more watches. They have done a few where they just print it on, which again, my watch does that. And I actually like how it looks printed on, but they decided they wanted to add some three-dimensionality to it, I guess. Otherwise, it follows the standard grammars of design. This is actually, it's really, I don't think I can zoom in anymore, but this is textured. It's like vertically striped. It's very finely done. Again, it's Grand Seiko. There's no one who does dials like this at this price point. So in my opinion, I think the next affordable, and that's not, I'm using that word inappropriately, high level dial design that comes to my mind is going into Mosier. It's like Grand Seiko, and then you jump to Mosier if you want to talk about stuff that's like under $20,000 potentially with really cool dial designs. And of course, that depends on the Mosier you go with. But anyway, I mean, they've got this language about whatever it's, there's always some like environment thing that, nature thing, I should say, that inspires these watches. But so it's got see-through case back, so you can look at the spring drive movement. Spring drives even the older spring drives are pretty neat. So it's plus or minus 15 seconds a month. So you get, basic quartz accuracy out of it, but it's smooth sweeped. It's spring driven. It's the 9R65 is a 3-day power reserve. So again, it's got some hefty duration. That's one of the things I've really liked a lot about my spring drive watch. So 100 meters of water resistance, so you can swim with it. It's not a big watch, other than the thickness. The 12 and a half millimeters, I do think is a little thick for the watch. It's not bad for a 40 millimeter watch, but it's only 46 millimeters lug to lug. It's not, they wear relatively well, if a bit chunky is how I would describe it. But I don't know. I thought this, maybe it's because of that. It's hard to tell on it, but that slight vertical texturing to it just gives it a little bit more life without being as in your face as, say, the Snowflake or anything. And so I just thought when this one was announced, I was like, oh, this is really, I actually thought it was going to be a limited watch. And that one, if it was limited, it's still available. So I don't think this one was limited. I don't remember if either of the two kind of US special editions were or were not. If they were, I think it was just the mechanical version. But regardless, I thought it was a standout watch. Nothing trailblazing. We're really just talking dial variants a lot of times with Grand Seiko. And that's because Grand Seiko, because they follow this, what they call the grammar of design, there are certain things they don't like to change on their watches. Like that there's going to be the double baton at the 12 o'clock, and where it's Zaratsu polished on, certain beveling techniques that they do and stuff. It's just, they've got those sort of rules. But as a time plus date watch, I find it both traditional looking, different in the sense that it, as a Japanese watch with this grammar philosophy, it looks, I think, quite a bit different than the Swiss watches do. And it's very, very, I think, attractive for the price point. So anyway, moving to my 7th watch. Let's do another Omega. I was complaining earlier about Omega not liking to do watches with without dates. Well, they did have a pretty, almost, I don't know if I want to call it a sleeper hit. This is the CK859. Now, the pricing, $6,500. So we moved up $500 more from the Aquaterra. This watch is not made anymore. When I went into my Omega dealer in, I think it was October, it might have been late September, they still had this, and they actually got it out and showed it to me. So this is not only a watch without a date, this is a hand wind watch. So I believe they're using they're still using their coaxial movement. So it's going to be that 3.5 hertz thing, but they've got this, the 8926. So it's a manual wind movement, and small seconds. It looks really good in person. This is one of those where I think it looks okay here, but it looks really good in person. So you might be able to make out the AG925 for the silver dial. That's something I really associate with Breguet liking. Well, actually, Breguet likes to use gold dials, but silver dial, blued hands, nice, really sharp second hand, small second indicator, of course. We got the 1239 markings on the watch. I do like really bold Arabic callouts on hour markers like this, in variety of configurations, but I think this one is extremely attractive. Overall, as a dress watch, I thought this looked really, really good. And I still do. I still think if you want a classic throwback looking style watch, but you don't want to buy a vintage watch, this was an excellent watch to consider. It was not revealed as a limited watch, but then as sales went along, they announced that they weren't going to be making it anymore. I think that kind of spiked demand a little bit. Again, for me, it wasn't a watch I ended up biting on. I have more interest in that aforementioned Aquaterra, in part because I already have a number of dress watches, as I've noted before, which I prefer to this. It's kind of overall, I thought it was a really nice looking watch. I thought it was maybe a little silly that they went in and said, "Oh, we're not going to make any more." At least in this exact configuration. So I thought that was a little, cheeky of them, but that wasn't why I decided against it. It was just kind of like, it's a category of watches I already have a lot of, and I didn't know what I would feel obligated to get rid of a dress watch to bring that one in. So again, I thought really nice standout. I thought that was far more interesting than their silly, let's go like the deepest diving watch of the deepest diving watch before Rolex had their deeper dive watch sort of, I don't care about that sort of weird race, but we're going to talk about one that stood out to me that I didn't really know about initially until we actually did a this or that. But anyway, so the CK859, if you can find one, if you like that look, you might still be able to find them around without going used. I don't know if they trade more used than they do new. I don't know how many they made. So it's tough to say, but I really do like that look if you're into the classic style. So let's bring up a brand I have never owned and don't usually talk about, and that's TAG. Now, I was making fun of this. Oh, well, I've got the deepest diving watch, says Omega. And then, no, I've got the deepest diving watch, says Rolex. Well, this was not saying it's the deepest diving watch, but it is a deep diving watch. And so I'm thinking, if you're someone who was into like super serious dive watches, I think the TAG Heuer Aqua Racer Professional 1000 Super Diver is definitely a watch worth looking at. $6,650. This is not all that much more than the CK watch we just looked at from Omega. We actually talked about this on one of my prior this or that games that we did as a live stream. You can go back and check the archive if you want. I matched this watch up against a Planet Ocean to see which one people preferred. And I believe I actually chose the Planet Ocean. But that wasn't because I thought this was a bad watch. It's just there are a few aesthetic things that I personally prefer a little bit more on the Planet Ocean, but the Planet Ocean wasn't a 2022 watch, and this was. So, looking at this, and I see it's kind of an animated image, but it kind of, in a way, it's not unique because it almost feels like a Magpie went in and took some of the favorite elements from a whole bunch of other watches, but it blended together pretty well, I think. I think my least favorite thing is actually, I mentioned how some people don't like this Aquaterra's broad arrow minute hand. I think it looks a lot better than the broad arrow hour hand look does on this. But again, remember its purpose, right? This is a 1,000 meter dive watch. It's got a lot of lume in it. You can see it. You can see it as a different color versus the metal. There's value in that. So from a functional standpoint, totally get it. I like the coin-edged bezel. It's not perfectly round like most dive watches, but they didn't go with the smooth scallop of the Omega 300M. And if you've ever handled the Omega 300M bezel, I think it looks great. It turns like crap. It's horrible. You can't get a grip on it, especially if your hands are wet. So this looks like it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? We're going to make it a different shape than perfectly round, but we're still going to texture it so you can actually play with it and not have to worry about your fingers slipping on it. This orange, a lot of dive watches do this, but of course, the first 15 minutes being in orange reminds me very much of the Planet Ocean. You've got the horizontal stripe. Okay, so it's not wave pattern. There are the horizontal lines, but again, it feels like it's a page out of Omega. Date window at the 6 o'clock. Very inoffensive. Modern Omega 300Ms do that too. Lots of lume spots on it. In fact, the bezel is also well loomed, which I love. And I'm wearing my my Tudor Black Bay bronze today, and it's only got it's well loomed as a dial, but there's only lume on the bezel in the pip, the little lume pip. Let me get real close. Not my favorite way. I mean, at least it's got lume, but not my favorite way. This is my favorite. I really like seeing bezels dripping in lume like this for serious dive watches. I think it looks really, really good. And then I feel like a page straight out of the Panerai book. Let's put this little guard there's a term for these. I forget it, but a little flip over class, an extra guard to protect the crown. So, but I think it looks better actually than the Panerai does. I'm not a big Panerai fan. So overall, I thought this is a pretty serious piece of hardware, 1,000 meters of water resistance, but it also didn't break the bank. $6,650. I mean, we're talking serious luxury watch money at this point, but it's substantive. This is not just a blingy watch. They put real tech in it. Tag is a weird company to me. I roll my eyes at their coming out with their NFT watch, especially now. I guess it's easy in hindsight, but I criticized it when it came out. But it's trying to jump onto crypto and NFTs, that's like a real thing that people need to be treat seriously. My biases are showing, obviously. I don't understand a watch company doubling down, tripling down into that stuff and making things that celebrate it. But they also seem to be going back to their heritage stuff a lot, which I think is good. Doing super serious, tech stuff like the Professional 1000, which I think is good. And of course, I didn't put it in my list, but and the fun stuff like the Mario watches, I think that's good too. I think they're in an interesting place. I think they're cheap enough on the luxury end that they're not going to get Audemars Piguet over Black Panther sort of stuff and really be judged harshly for doing a pop culture collaboration. But they elevate whatever they're working on more so than a Casio collaboration or a Seiko collaboration would, just because of the starting price points for tags. It's just how it is. But anyway, I did think that was a pretty impressive watch, so I did want to show it as one of my 11 favorites. And so we'll go ahead and move now to watch number 9. Now we're jumping way up now. That last watch, the Tag Heuer, was $6,650 retail. We're skipping the entire $10,000 to $19,999 range. Okay, we're going to go to Parmigiani next. So this is it says it's in Swiss francs, but Swiss francs and the US dollar are very, very similar. So think roughly 26,000 US dollars. This is the Parmigiani Tonda PF GMT Rattrapante steel watch. And the thing that I think is so interesting about it is solely how they handle the split GMT function. And that's what caught my eye. I would never go after this watch at this price point. I think it is way too expensive for what is essentially, well, not essentially, it is a 3-hand watch that often would be used as a 2-hand watch. Now, I could go to YouTube and I found some videos, but there weren't any really great snapshots that I felt I could pull in that would make a lot of sense to people. But again, so it's got these hands, gold, rhodium plated. It's got a fancy movement with gold. I mean, that's, they're doing precious metal stuff with it, even though there's steel involved as well. But it's this, can I zoom in? It's this handset there we go. They got a nice image here. Okay. So the way this works, actually, I'm gonna have to scroll up again so you can get a look. This is a button right here, kind of at what we would think of as sort of the 7 to 8 o'clock position. It's another shot of it. This is a button. So what happens is this GMT hand hides under the hour hand, and then you can push the button. And every time you push the button, it pops out an hour in a 1 hour increment. So you can jump it to another time zone. And when you don't need the GMT hand, it's perfectly aligned and sized under the regular hour hand that the watch will look like a two-handed watch to you. But when you use that button and you need the second time zone or want the second time zone, it becomes a three-handed watch. No second hand, but it offers true GMT functionality. Just that jumping aspect to keep the GMT hand out of the way from cluttering up the dial is why this is on my list. Don't get me wrong, it's an attractive dial overall. I love this textured blue. I think it looks really good, and I'm not a blue watch fan. The Parmigiani logo is inoffensively placed. It's a minimalist design watch. There's a lot about it I really, really like. There's some pieces I don't like. The $26,000 price point, 60 meters of water resistance. It's still 10.7 millimeters thick, which is a thin watch for a GMT, but again, we're talking some hefty money. 40 millimeters is a great size. I just, I kind of wish it was not quite so luxury, and it really I'd like to see someone take this and do it at a cheaper price point. Do the jumping GMT hand, but we don't need the gold rotor, micro rotor, and all that. You close case back that thing up. Throw on a running seconds hand as well, though. I think most people would like to have that. Again, this is kind of wanting to pull almost double duty as a dress watch. That's what I always think with two-handers, but especially if you're getting this like steel cased watch, it's not that steel can't be a dress watch. I mean, all my dress watches are steel. I don't know. It feels like it doesn't know what it wants to be. I'm going to guess. I didn't check this. So this may be wrong. So apologies if it is, but Parmigiani is not a brand that holds value, generally speaking. So this would be a watch I would try and find used, because I'm assuming you'll be able to find it for a lot less used than it sells for new. I don't know how many are even out there used right now, though, because again, this was a 2022 reveal. It was revealed quite a while ago in the year, but it was a 2022 reveal. So anyway, very, very expensive, but I just thought that GMT is truly hiding the entire GMT hand until you want to use it. I just thought that was really straightforward, right? Like, it's not cutting edge innovation, but it's really cool idea that actually offers a lot of practicality, because there are plenty of times when you have a GMT hand and you might look and become distracted, especially if it's got a seconds hand, thinking, all right, well, which hand is which? And that's why usually they do something really bold, right? Like Rolex on the Explorer 2 tips the hand in orange, or in the old days red, or in the old days orange. So you can easily tell that that's your GMT hand. Well, if you don't want some like loud color on it, doing something like what Parmigiani's done, like make one hand gold and the other hand rhodium looking, clean. It's clean. So anyway, I thought really, really cool. Obviously very, very expensive. And of course, these last two, because we're going in ascending order of price, are going to be extremely expensive. Well, we already got into the price of, relatively low end retail, car prices with the Parmigiani. Let's go ahead and get up much more into the hefty car prices. Now, anyone who's watched my channel for a while knows I am a big fan of the Lange 1. It is my most favorite dress watch that exists. I like regular Lange 1s. I like grand Lange 1s. I like most of the configurations of them. So I can't say that they can do no wrong. There are actually some designs of Lange that, the Lange 1, I should say, that I think are actually better executed by Glashütte Original's Pano line. But broadly speaking, I do think if I have to go over full aesthetic balance, I do think the Langes win out over the GOs. But it just depends. I think Lange makes better use of the entire dial. My biggest gripes, if anyone cares, would probably be the double stack date windows. So on GOs, these are on the same plane. So the day, the single digit day doesn't look lower because it isn't lower in the window. I don't really like that about this. But again, without designing my own watch, how would a watch ever do everything I want? But look at this one. This one now again, price wise, we're past small cars. We're getting into bigger cars. $48,100. Again, Longe is a brand you go for used. They almost always take a hit on the secondary market, usually significantly. I like this. This is what they call pink gold. They have a white gold version as well. I like this one a little bit better. You can see we've got this nice like texture. Again, my early watches that we talked about with like the jumping back, like these Zens with that texturing, and the Longines with its texturing. As I hop back so you guys can see those really quick. You see, I have a type. I like fume. I like sunburst. And I like that kind of pebbly, gravelly texture. And so they've got that going on here. I like the power reserve. I think it's really well placed, better than the Pano reserves. That's what the names of the Pano reserve ones are. Small seconds hand here, offset, hours and minutes here with a nice, real clean overlap. It's just super clean look. I like everything about it really, other than the staggering on the date window, which is something that Longe always does. And so again, this was new for 2022. Longe's movements, no matter what version you go with, they're all extremely well decorated. They don't pull a Patek Philippe on you, where the lower end watches basically get a lot less attention than the higher end watches when it comes to the movement. I wouldn't get it just over the movement, but I was hoping to see if I could give you. Okay, there's the back shot. Give you a good look of it. This is a German company, so in German tradition would say 3/4 bridge. So most of it's actually bridge work, but again, very, very detailed, hand worked balance cock here. So you've got that going on. I mean, it's obviously it's an extremely attractive watch. This particular iteration, this particular look is new for 2022. There's no new complication. You could get older ones with things that do what, like power reserves and big date and the offset. I mean, the Longe one's been around since like 99 or so. So, there's nothing revolutionary about this watch. It's just a different look. But of course, because I'm a sucker for the Longe one's design, I'm a sucker for this. And of course, it ends up making my list at number 10, going up by price. They're not in my favorite order, though. Obviously, if money were no object, this would probably be the one watch out of any of them I'm showing you that I would buy, just because I really, really have always wanted a Longe one. But they're, $48,100 is, I mean, there's hobby money and then there's like hobby money, right? And I have a line. A line has to be drawn somewhere. So, final watch to end out this stream. I've been making great time. We got to go up in price, right? Last one's got to be the most expensive. I'm going to give you guys some hints. It's 37 millimeters in diameter. I think it's the thinnest watch of all of them that I'm covering today. It's 7.95 millimeters. So it's not even 8 millimeters thick. Hand wind movement, obviously, to accomplish that. And the price at $69,000 is Vacheron Constantin's 222. Now, when I saw this watch, my very first reaction was, wow, that is a lot of gold. Like, that's gaudy levels. That's mafia style Rolex 80s day date levels of gold, right? But that's what works about the watch. And so again, there's nothing particularly innovative about this. The 222 is a throwback. Vacheron had a 222 in the past. It's an extremely popular as in collectible watch, very expensive, very difficult to get. They've by and large kept the aesthetic the same. Very 70s looking watch, integrated bracelet style. The movement is updated, though. It's not the old style movement that has a modern movement in it. But for me, 70s style watches are one of two things. This works to be like, it's kitsch in a way that works. Like, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, no, that came out of the 70s. But it's okay that it doesn't just belong there. We can kind of embrace it. I don't know if we're embracing it ironically or not. But regardless, I think like I could get behind it. Like, I wouldn't mind wearing it. The Zenith throwbacks from 69, you might remember they just before they rolled out the original, the El Primero originals, which I prefer more because they've got the new movement. They had some on their old ladder bracelet style that were real chunky, like cushion case looking, and very 70s. And I think those kind of look like what I call 70s cool. And then there's the Nautilus, which I think it looks like 70s needs to stay in the 70s. 70s fad, not 70s cool. Obviously, everyone's tastes are different, and more people agree that the Nautilus is cool than those Zeniths were, because you can get those ladder bracelet style Zeniths on Joma Shop, like under $6,000. I think they retailed close to $9,000. Anyway, so this is retailed $69,000. It uses 25-22 caliber. I don't think the specifications are all that interesting. 50 meters of water resistance, disappointing. But again, this is not really a sports watch. It's 18 karat gold watch. It's just Vacheron's not of the Holy Trinity. I'm afraid I fall into the stereotype, and I just like Vacheron's the last one I think of, even though it's the oldest company. They don't have a hit in the same sense. Like Patek's got the Nautilus. Obviously, Audemars Piguet has gone practically all in on the Royal Oak. Vacheron, I guess they've got their, the Overseas. It got popular during the pandemic because people didn't get the other two options, from Patek or AP, but it's just not the same. It doesn't hold the same. Historically, they've not traded for more used than new. The 222, I think, because it was so collectible, I think this is sort of a game. Obviously, it's not a sports watch in the steel sense of the word, but integrated bracelet watch. This might actually be a better competitor than anything else they've really been doing. It's tough to say because obviously the starting price point being near $70,000 really rolls out a lot of people. If there are those that are willing to get on a list and try and get something retail, I mean, when you're jumping up from like 30 to 40,000 up to 70 almost, it's a big jump. So I don't know. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. Tuesday, the 27th, 2022, December 27th, 2022, 9 p.m. Eastern. This or that. I'm not done building it out. I've got 2 guests secured. So we just locked in the time as quickly as possible, because I have had several people email into me saying, Dennis, please do another tot. We want to see the this or that. So I'll do that. I like to do polling live. So if you're able to tune in live and you want to vote on which of the 2 options you think is the better option, it's a lot of fun. If not, feel free to, of course, enjoy the video recorded, because I'll have YouTube record it. Likewise, if you're watching this as a recording, I'd like to know which watches you thought were the best of 2022, especially if it's a watch I didn't cover, because obviously I only covered 11. That's not even how many came out at Watches and Wonders, right? Like way more came out than that. And there were a few others that I looked at. Like I ruled out a lot of limited editions. I did those Zens. I kept the Zens in, but like there was a Cartier Santos I thought looked really dressy and cool, kind of with this pink dial. It wasn't quite a salmon dial. It was cool. I almost put it on the list, and I thought no one can get it. I don't even want to talk about it. At least the Zens came out with a lot of them, so you could probably find them used. But that was my logic. But anyway, that is it for this live stream. Thank you so much if you tuned in live. Thank you for watching below, or I should say recording. Comment below on any thoughts about it or things you want me to talk about in the future. I'm always happy to put watch topics under consideration. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a like. And if you just stop by and you want to be notified when I get new videos, I think there's a subscribe thing somewhere in YouTube you can click on, and it'll let you know when I have new videos out. Otherwise, I will talk to you all very, very soon. Take care, everybody.